Hi everybody, this is Spring, the fiber enthusiast. I'm back for the second part of my sock knitting on the magic loop tutorial. And we are going to be discussing the heel flap in this video. So we're going to start with the heel flap. And I kind of got one already almost done, just a couple rows from being done, and one that has just been started. So I'm going to set that one aside for a second, and I'm going to talk about this one. This is the heel flap side, and this is the side that the stitches will not be touched until this heel flap is done and we start the gusset. That's when these front stitches will be incorporated. So they kind of just hang out on your cord while you work back and forth across only this section of stitches, knitting one side and purling the other, and knitting and purling and knitting and purling until you get the length desired for the amount of stitches and heel flap that you need, pattern that you're working on. So I'm going to set this down and we're going to go back to the one that I'm almost done with so we can kind of discuss and go through a couple of rows. So like I said, I've only been working on this one side, which is exactly half the amount of stitches. You have 28 on one side and 28 on the other side. Okay. So for this particular pattern and tutorial, basically I've been on a 2-inch regimen here. I had a 2-inch cuff, a 2-inch leg, and now I'm looking at roughly 2 to 2¼ inches for my heel flap, which also would be a repeat of these 2 rows about 14 times, roughly. So let's get into what these rows consist of. And this is, it will be the same, it's a 2-row repeat from the very first row until you get done with your heel flap. So I'm going to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing here. So I'm going to use that back needle to work on these stitches. Okay, so on the knit side, this is the pattern. You're going to slip the first stitch and knit the next. Slip, knit. Slip, knit. Slip, knit. Slip, knit. Okay? Let's talk about how you can tell where you're at, just in case you're not sure if you slipped it or knitted the last stitch. Let's go down a little bit here. Okay, so you can see that I knitted this last stitch. The yarn is coming out of, get something to point with here. The yarn is coming through that stitch and coming out the back of it. Then you see this loop that goes over this stitch. That's because that was a slipped stitch. you see that it goes in here to this stitch and comes out and goes over. So you can see that that one is knitted, and then this one is a slipped stitch. Okay, so let's carry on with our slip and knit pattern. Zoom you back out some here. And you'll continue this slip, knit all the way to the end of the row, ending with a knit stitch. And I do check often to make sure that I am doing the right one, because I have gotten to the end of the row and went, that's wrong, because my last stitch should be a knit and I'm slipping. So I check often to make sure. Just like that. Take that out. My last stitch was a knit. That should be a slip. And a knit. And a slip. And a knit. And a slip. Whoop, almost. And a knit. And a slip. And the last stitch is a knit. Phew. Okay, the purl side. Really, really simple also. On the purl side, you are going to slip that first stitch, just like such. Okay. And then you're going to purl every stitch across the row. You only slipped the very first stitch. And after that, you just purl across. Okay, I'm going to finish purling this row off camera, and I will meet you back when I have finished the row. Okay, I've finished that purl row. I'm back on the knitted side here. And if I count correctly, I should have 14, including what's on my needle, stitches. And I should be at about 2 inches. So that's where I started, was right here at that black. And I'm right at 2, almost 2¼ inches. Right there. Okay. So that part looks good. And then I will count out these stitches. And you can see where to count is each of these V's. Get you in focus here. Each of these V's is your stitches. So we're going to count up the row, and I should be right about 14. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 on my needle. Okay, so now we are ready to move along and start. Let's back up just a little bit more here. So this is going to start our heel. So this is the top of the sock. This is the leg part that goes around the ankle. And then this is the heel flap that goes down to the heel. And now we will start to curve around the heel and move out the foot towards the toe. Okay,